So I've been doing these and my customers just love them. It gives them a little insight into people's, just lives and not even that, but it makes it feel really personal
Yeah.
for the brand. And
Mhm.
and I forget how many people watch them because customers will just come in and they're like, oh, I watched that interview with,
So and
Trevor
so.
or whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they love it. And so we have an event with Sandra Swick coming up, and she is in your division. So why don't you tell them who you are and what your title is, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for having me, Jessica. And I'm Pam Mahshie, and I am the Overlock Business Manager for Bernina of America. And I've been with Bernina since 2020.
But how long have you been sewing?
Oh, you really want to know how long I've been sewing or
You can make
how
up a
long
number.
I
You can
can
give it
make
a
up a
percentage
number?
of your life.
Well, a large percentage. We'll just put it that way. It's a large percentage. But actually, I started sewing when I was in sixth grade, and my mom taught me how to sew. And we were part of a group, kind of like Girl Scouts, but through our church called Pioneers. And so through the Pioneers group, we learned how to sew. And actually, my mom, we had a serger, and she felt very strongly that all of us needed to work on the sergers first. Because when you work on a serger first, you have that more of an instant kind of gratification, and it looks just like something you may have purchased. So when you're in sixth grade and you're in middle school, you just want to look like you didn't make it. You wanted to look like you purchased it from a store back in the dark ages.
That's an interesting, no, stop. That's actually a really interesting point though, because I think that this is such a fun time to be around in the sewing industry. As someone that's grown up in it, and I know you've been in the industry for a long time, we're seeing like a huge resurgence of young people that are making their own clothes again. And
Right.
a lot of times, I watch all these like YouTube videos and TikToks and what's the first machine you should buy? And I'm like screaming through the screen, you should buy a serger
Surgeon. That's right.
because they
Yeah.
all want to make garments.
And I think a lot of times people think that, that's where they started. In the 50s and 60s, they were introduced into the garment sewing, and they took an industrial machine and scaled it down for home use, like they did most all of the other machines as well. But also what it did is it gave people that confidence and that way of sewing that their sewing machines just can't sew. And many
Yeah.
times we think that, oh, a serger is just an accessory to sewing. But in many cases, especially now with the advancement that we have in the machines and how much easier they are to use, I mean, they can become almost primarily your machine, except for the buttonholes. That, of course, you have to do on your sewing machine. But people will ask me all the time, well, how much do you sew on your serger or overlock in comparison to your sewing machine? And I always say at least 90% of whatever I make, whether it's a garment or a quilt or other home deck type projects, I use my serger 90% of the time until the buttonholes or until it's something that I need to get really, really close or something that's really intricate.
We have the most amazing garment instructor at our store. I don't know if you met her last time. Her name's Carol. She's like an institution in the industry. She's been around for a long time, and she has a 12-year-old that has been making couture clothing, and her mom just bought her a Bernina L890 for her
Wow,
birthday.
fantastic.
Yes, because she wanted an all-in-one, and she had just been using the sewing machine, doing French seams and beautiful stuff like that. But her mom was like, "How do we take this to the next level?" And I said, "Well, she really needs an overlocker or a cover stitch, or how about both?"
Yeah, or
So,
how about both?
so
I
I, go ahead, Pam.
No, I was going to say, and when you said or both, it really depends on your sewing style, whether you choose to purchase one combo machine or whether you decide to purchase two, one that does overlock and one that does cover stitching. So it really, and how Europeans sew is different than the way the US market sews. And I was privileged to be able to go and spend some time with the European importers in Switzerland, and the way that they sew is different from the way that we sew.
How is it different? Are they mostly using overlockers?
They purchase mostly two machines. And so
Okay.
many times we'll think about the limited space that they have in Europe for sewing. And because they make so many garments, they purchase two machines, one for overlock and one for cover stitch. And here in the US market, we have more combo machines where people will purchase just one single machine. And because it's so easy to move from one function to another, someone said to me not too long ago, now with these machines, the L890, it's very similar from changing from sewing to embroidery, because
Definitely.
you don't have all those added steps that you have to go through. And when they said that, I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And really it is very much like changing your machine over from one function to another.
So, okay, I would consider you the expert of experts in overlocking. I've known you for quite some time. How long have you been in the sewing? You've been in the sewing industry so long that I believe you were my
You don't even
grandfather's
know
rep.
me. I was. Yes. Yeah. I go way back that far. So I started in
You don't look it.
1980. Well, thank you. Thank you. 1983. So it's 40 years this year that
Wow.
I've been, I know, I can't imagine, I can't believe that. But and my sons are of an age right now, and one of my oldest son is actually working in the sewing industry now, which I feel kind of proud of. He's a technician, and I just love that he's using his what he loves to do and his skills in the sewing industry as well. But I always said, do what you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. And it really has gone so fast because it is something that I truly love to do and love to share what I've learned and gained over the years. And, hopefully it inspires and gives people that motivation that they want to do more as well.
So when you first got into the industry, were you primarily garment sewing? Was that like your main thing that you've always loved to do, or just a little bit of everything?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. I mean, I have my first quilt that I made in 1976, and you will actually die, and any quilter that's watching this will just fall out of their chair. Guess it's made out of polyester double knit. So it will never die and it will never decompose. It will always be there forever and ever.
It's a
And
family heirloom.
it is a family heirloom. And it weighs a ton because it's double knit polyester. And it's like, why would we ever make anything out of that? Well, those were some of the fabrics that we had in 1976 that my mom was sewing with, and she did sewing for my dad and my sister, and it you can look through because it's a patchwork. It was 5 inch or 6 inch squares, and it was all the different kinds of fabrics we just had from a bin and just cut it up. And now I can still look back and remember, oh, I had a dress out of this, or we made that.
Oh,
And so that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun to
yeah.
do. Yeah.
So what prompted you to actually like embark into the sewing industry? Because, that's the number one question I get, especially at my age. I know you were really young when you got into the sewing industry. You were 12.
Yeah. I
No,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
but,
Thank you.
but what
Thank you.
prompt what
Well,
what prompted that?
so honestly, when I graduated from high school, I hung around with all the smart kids, so they thought I was smart. Well, that's a good thing. But I wanted to be a medical pathologist, and
Okay.
I loved science, loved that part of it. And I looked at the schooling for that, and I'm like, Mm, no, that's just going to take too long. So then I thought, well, there was an open house at one of the schools nearby, and I went to that, and it was a program called Clothing and Textiles. And in this clothing and textiles group or area, we were learning about textiles and drafting and fitting and merchandising and uh, we had a class called equipment and demonstration. So they would set a machine in front of you, and within 2 weeks or so, you had to pick out features that you thought people would really like and be motivated by. And of course, they had sergers set up in that room, and you see them, and you everybody remembers the first time they sat in front of a serger. And when you start working with them, they certainly weren't as easy as they are now, but
No.
that's where I got started, and then I moved on to teaching some adult education classes after I graduated, and then we went to a trade show, and the one of the instructors asked if I would go along, and I said, "Sure, I'll go along. Why not?" It was Las Vegas, and I'm 19 years old, so sure, why not? Let's go. And then we went and I was hired on with another company and worked with
Wow.
them for 33 years.
So I remember when you started working with Bernina, I was very excited because my mom just adores you, and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" and Pam, and it's going to be so great.
Mhm.
I always tell this story, Pam. I've been alive as long as sergers have threaded themselves, so I
Yeah, so
have.
you don't really know. You don't really know.
I have a wealth of knowledge about sewing machines. I say it's like what fills my brain, and that's why I can't get much else done because I just have like random part numbers and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
floating around. Um, the one thing I cannot do is thread a non-air thread serger without watching or reading the manual. Like I have
yeah.
to look, I have to do the loopers, because
Hmm.
I've always really had an air thread around. And
Right.
so when Bernina came out with, I'll never forget this conversation. You're going to laugh about this. I don't know if you know. So Paul Ashworth, the CEO of Bernina USA, calls me on the phone, and and we're getting ready to do an event with you, and he's telling me about the new machine and how excited he is. And he says to me, he goes, and the cover stitch threads itself. I said, no. And he goes, yes, and it does the conversions in the machine itself too. And I said, and I remember I
No.
got off the phone with Paul, and I said, and I put the phone down. I go, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. And he did, of course, know what he
And
was
he
talking
did.
about.
Yes, he did.
But
Hmm.
I was in such disbelief, Pam. I was like, "There's no way that can happen." I've seen sergers and overlockers and cover stitches my whole life. I've been
Yeah.
intimidated, especially by the cover stitch my whole life. There's no way this thing threads itself. I have to see it to believe it. And then you come, and dang it, it did thread itself.
Dang it, it did. Yeah. And I I I came to Bernina and Paul called me. So Paul called me also and he said, we understand that you're the one that needs to come and help us lead this division. And I'm like, really? You want me to come? And he goes, yeah, you have the knowledge to help us develop this product area group and segment. And I said, well, thank you. But, I've grown up with a company and a product that I love, and I have to see and I have to prove to myself that this is the best product in the marketplace. So they brought me in, and I sat down with it, and I always say, I have the worst poker face there is because the more I started working with it, the bigger I smiled and the closer I got to the machine. And I can't say enough about how I really enjoy working with this machine and how pleasurable it is for anyone, whether they're brand new to surging or whether they have been surging for years. It is a game changer, and it feels like a sewing machine. It sounds like a sewing machine. It sews through anything, anything.
Anything. We have a really great, I've done an interview with him before. His name's Terrence Williams. And when I first met Terrence, he's a local designer and he sells
Mm-hmm.
these really beautiful like tool dusters. They're
Oh,
sequins,
yes,
they're
yes,
all
yes,
kinds of
yes,
stuff.
yes.
Yes, he's now a Burnett
He,
ambassador.
ambassador. I was going to say, I
Yes.
think he's on the Burnett ambassador team.
So back when Bernina was doing those 830 to 880 trade-ins that they were doing, I got a ton of 830s that there wasn't really anything wrong with them. So I just started searching like Instagram and YouTube for local people that were sewing, but maybe had like a $99 like Walmart machine or
Uh-huh.
something.
Sure,
And I
sure.
was giving them, I didn't want to resell the 830s, so I was just giving people 830s.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow,
Terrence
that's
was
great.
Terrence was one of them. And I said to him when I met him, I said, I'm going to make you a Bernina person because I think that you are going to be just fall in love with this brand. And he came to one of our Serger events and he had never purchased an expensive machine before. And he fell in love with the L890, like fell
Mm-hmm.
in love. And he did this whole, Bernina should like do something with this. He did a whole campaign where he raised money like selling these headbands that he makes, these really pretty like knit headbands, where all the money was going to go towards him buying the L890. And he did
Oh,
it.
wow.
He did it in 3 weeks. Like he did this whole campaign, like I want this machine. I had so much fun. He did these reels on it, and he got the L890, and he sews through like sequins and all kinds of crazy fabric and makes the most beautiful stuff with it. It's
Wow,
amazing.
that's a great story. So, it goes to show that when you really want something, you're going to do whatever it takes in order to get it, right?
He could not unsee the L890 once he was with it. But I just think that watching it, I mean, I try not to get into the TikTok cycle, Pam, because it's
Mm-hmm.
too much.
Mm-hmm.
But when I watch these young kids sewing, I like they're always using like their twin needle to replicate like the cover stitch. You know,
Right.
they're using the zigzag in their over edge foot to try to replicate a serger. And I just think like you could definitely get into there's not just the L890. What else does Bernina have in their
Oh,
line?
so you mentioned Burnett. And the Burnett machines, they have a combo, the B68. They have a B64 and a B62. So all of those machines are air threading. They actually have a free arm also. They have so many features like the Berninas have. They just don't have the screen. But they are fantastic at that price. I mean, there's nothing else like them out in the marketplace, and it really does give those newer sewers and someone who's getting started. I always say to be a newer sewist, it you don't have to be of a young age. You could be newer. You might have been out of the sewing industry for a while and or sewing and you come back into it because you're newly retired or you decide that I like that I've had enough screen time. I want that tactile
Yes.
craft again. And so many people want to start in an area like that, and really gives them that opportunity to either go with a combo machine or choose to do two separate machines also.
A
Or
lot
if
of
they
first
have,
time
or if,
moms.
yeah, yeah, exactly. First time moms, those that have an overlock machine already may just want to add a cover stitch machine because
So
there's so
it's,
many things you can do.
did you ever think you would see a time, especially since you've been in the industry, that we had screens and digital aspects to these overlockers?
No, no, and what that does is it just the built-in tutorials. I think when I show the machines and talk about them, and we are in a class like last weekend when I was at your mom's store and we were doing a class, and we would get to a point and you could see kind of the deer in the headlights look, and I'd say touch that, see that little video camera, just touch it, and they are like so amazed at how much technology is built into this machine that's going to help them in their everyday sewing. I always say, in the back, it looks a little neat, but if I would turn the camera around, it's just like anybody else's space. You have to stage an area or the sewing room. it looks like a bomb sometimes has gone off inside there because you're going through projects so fast and trying to get things out on the road or finished up before you have to leave or go somewhere. And nobody has extra time to
No.
actually, fiddle with their machines and get them set up the way they want them to sew.
Well, the number one thing that you hear all the time, I saw this hilarious Instagram reel about having anxiety about switching their thread colors on their overlocker. I
Yeah,
forgot what they called it.
was
Like,
it the one she was like banging the threads together? I can
yes,
do this. I
yes,
can do this. I can. And it's
yes.
like I saw that and I'm like, I needed to comment and say, well, you really need to go and get a Bernina.
I thought the same thing. I thought, oh my gosh, if only she knew that there are options in this world.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Um, my mom, this is a funny story. When I first went to go work for her out in Fresno, her and Ralph, I call that my first paid position with my mom, because I
Yeah,
worked
because you
for
worked for her for a lot of years. It's just that it may not have been a paid position.
Absolutely. One of the first machines that I sold for her was a serger, and my mom said, "Okay, you're going to sit down and you're going to thread it up now with her." And started sweating because it was not an air thread. It was like a trade-in serger. I don't remember what brand, but
Hmm.
it was not an air thread. And I sat down. I looked at her. I go, "I don't know how to do that." She goes, "You don't know how to thread a serger?" I go, "No, I know how to push the button."
She told the story this last weekend about me coming into her store when I was her rep, and I said, "You're never going to sell those machines if you keep them on the shelf. You need to bring them down and you need to." So she goes, "We don't know what to do with them." So I said, "Well, let's go. Let's sit down and let's work on these machines so that you can understand how to use them as well, because they are such great little machines."
That was probably my mom's first paid position with her dad when you
Yeah,
met her, because she worked for him for a long time too
long
without,
time.
any help. I remember that store very vividly. It was painted like Miami Vice. Like, I think
Yes.
that was my mom's vibe. Pink.
But
You,
that was back in the day when that was okay. The
yeah, it was
Miami
pink.
Vice look.
And she had those shelves where it was like machines on the bottom and then there was like another tier and machines on the top. So she probably had all the sergers sitting on top then.
Yeah, yeah.
And
They were more like decorations rather than uh, functional pieces of equipment to actually sell.
can I tell you what I remember having that was serged that my mom just went crazy over? And you must have taught her this, but we had probably you had to have.
I
We
probably
probably
did.
had 50 sets of rolled hem napkins and placemats that matched it. We were the rolled hem napkin and placemat queens. Because it's a fun, easy, quick thing to do, and you can have different ones for all different holidays and parties and things like that. So
Yeah.
we had a ton of those. We also had a ton of wired ribbon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then
It,
go ahead.
and then embroidery came out, and then we did the rolled hem and put a little monogram in the corner of the
Oh my
napkin.
God. Yes. What were some other, the other big project back in the 90s that I could really see coming back, especially with these like young kids that love to thrift, were the
color
crazy,
blocked color blocked sweatshirts and t-shirts.
yes. Oh, do you know how much money that people would pay for that at like a resale store or
I
something like
know.
that?
And all the upcycling. So I've been following someone on Instagram, and they will go to the thrift store and they'll just pick out different items. Could be a pants that you make into part of a shirt, or they take the old granny square kind of afghans and they make them into a sweater. And the serger is a perfect machine to do that with.
Because it allows you to cut and sew and secure your seam all at the same time, right?
Okay, so one time, Jessica, we need to get to come together, or I need to come to the store, and I need to show your group, your viewers out here, because I'm sure there's a number of quilters out there too. What we're doing with making half square triangles and no waste flying geese, never using a rotary cutter.
What?
What? I know it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I have Sandra coming next, but I think I have you requested for next year sometime. So you're
Okay, well, we'll
a
definitely
busy
have to
gal.
do that.
That is amazing. Wow.
Yeah,
And
and they're
the other thing
perfect.
the other thing they love is when we put the fusible thread in the lower looper and do the
And do
serge
the
the binding
binding.
on.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's a phenomenal trick because then you
Mhm.
just wrap it around. It's no steam a seam or anything like that anymore. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And it's all
everybody needs a
even.
serger.
All even. Yeah, yeah.
Everyone needs a serger. That's our takeaway from this, Pam.
That's right. That's right. Whether you're a quilter, a garment sewist, a home deck sewist, just like Terrence does with fashion sewing. I mean, there are so many opportunities that are there that certainly we don't want to ever, pass over French seams or other ways of doing it. But, there are other ways of doing things too that are just as secure and look just as good.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So sergers have come, overlockers have come so far in the past even 5 years. What is something that you would love to see an overlocker do that it doesn't do right now? What's something crazy that you can make up in your brain that we can wish for?
Well, some things I can't say because I've shared them with Bernina that I want them to come out with.
Okay, something funky then.
Something funky then. Um, hmm, I would really like to see. Now this one's way out there. I would really like to see where you wouldn't have to, because we have the screen. I would really like it to be able to maybe even push a button where the loopers maybe slide forward and back so you don't have to rethread for cover stitch.
Oh, 10 more years, we'll get it developed.
10 more years. 10 more years.
That is my favorite thing about Bernina. I know that L890 and the whole L series, new L series, took a long time to come out, but it is made to perfection. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
solid, sturdiest machine you'll ever see, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, no vibration in that machine at all. So as you're stitching with it, you don't have to, chase your machine across the table as you're stitching. And it really it's smooth. I always say it feels like you're sewing on a sewing machine, not like you're sewing on a serger. And that DC motor has a huge impact on being able to have that feel and that strength that the machine has. And decorative threads, that's what I'm all about, is using it. I always say, let's come off the edge creatively when we start working with our sergers.
Could you send me some pictures of you do some very, very beautiful things with an overlocker that probably people
Yeah.
wouldn't even imagine you could do with it. Would you send me some pictures?
Well, actually, funny you ask that, because Bernina just asked me for a whole bunch of pictures too.
So just forward them over.
they're 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 understanding the benefit of creative surging. And I always, because Bernina's history is in calling it an overlocker, and that's the kind of sewing, that's the kind of machine that they've always had, is something that only did an overlock stitch. So and in the US we call it a serger more than we call it an overlocker. And in our minds, we think overlock is always finishing an edge, where especially with the L890, you can sew in the middle of your fabrics and do some pretty cool things.
So is that the technical difference? Because I always find myself correcting from serger to overlocker.
Yeah.
Give me the breakdown there really quick.
The lowdown. And
Yes, yes.
they and it really it's kind of semantics. of whether you use the term serger or overlock, because they're really in essence doing the same thing, serging the edge or overlocking the edge. The machine itself then called an overlocker. But again, as I mentioned, when you use that word overlock or overlocker, it indicates in a customer's mind that it's always and only going to finish the edge. Using that term for an 860 or an 850, a 450, 460, sure, that's great. But when we come up to the L890, it is more than just an overlocker. It does all those other stitches. So I typically use the word serger when I get to that point in our line of
Okay.
machines.
Okay, I never
Yeah.
realized that. I just corrected myself from overlocker, serger to overlocker.
Yeah.
And I thought in my head overlocker, and see, this is where I can always learn something. I thought overlocker kind of encompassed the fact that it could be both a serger and a cover stitch, or it could do it could do both. So we just kind of like gave it an all in one. But overlocker, it's just semantics then. It's just
Yeah,
tomato,
yeah.
tomato.
And a lot of times you'll find that machines that are have their foundation in Europe, they are called overlockers. Where if they have
Oh,
their foundation in Asia, it's most of the time it's sergers.
that's so helpful for consumers and especially people that are like watching YouTube videos trying to figure out what to buy. Because I feel
Hmm.
like what happens is they come into the store and they, especially with the internet, they end up in a store because they're so confused by
Either
all
they're
the
very
numbers.
confused or they're very curious because they can see what's happening, but they don't really understand how it's happening or what is actually taking place in order to make it happen.
And that's why it's important to visit your dealer so then you can try
Yes.
it, feel it, touch it. I'm a millennial and I would never make a purchase that big without trying, touching, feeling first.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I'm an online shopper, so so that's how I feel about it. But especially an investment like an L890 or even the Burnett series, you want to be able to
Right.
have your hand held
Hmm. And
when you're getting going.
it's a skill. You grew up in it and I got into it very early. So it's just part of our DNA, right? And
Yeah.
we think sewing, serging, creating all the time. And that's the where our minds go, where some will have different jobs or they'll have different backgrounds and they may have never sewn before, where especially not having any formalized sewing classes, they just love that tactile side. They see the art in that fabric and that's where they want to start their creative journey, and they don't know exactly what path to go on.
Yeah, you're so right about that. I hope that people watching this video are like, I'm gonna go get a searcher.
Yes, everybody
That's
needs
what
a
I
serger.
need. That's what I need.
I think too that sergers, overlockers, whatever we term them, in the past have gotten a really bad rap where they people think that they're so hard and they think that, oh my goodness, they have all these threads on, and what am I going to do? I can't thread one, I can't keep one going, how am I going to keep four or five threads going at the same time? But keep in mind that there are no bobbins, so all of your
No
thread is
bobbin.
on the top. You're even on a sewing machine, you're always sewing with two threads at a time anyway. So you can sew with two threads on the L890 and make a stitch that looks just like your sewing machine stitch and not run out of bobbin thread.
Oh, that's such a great point. I was going to ask you, what's one thing you want everybody to know about an overlocker or a serger before we go? And I think that was your point.
Yeah, yeah,
That's an amazing point. You can chain stitch off just two threads and
yeah,
you would never run out.
yeah,
Well, if that's
yeah.
not enough reason to go buy out and buy an overlocker right now,
That's
then
right. That's how that's what I say to quilters. especially those that are chain piecing and piecing, doing a lot of piecing. I'll say, how would you like a machine that never runs out of bobbin thread in the middle of your seam? Well, that is like game changing.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna add that into Maddie's questions that she asks people when they come in looking for an overlocker,
Mm-hmm.
because they'll just
Yep.
lose their minds over that. Pam, this was awesome. I was hoping, I was like, I wonder if my mom could join us, but she had something going on. I thought be fun to have her pop
She
in.
wouldn't. Does she get up this early? She does.
She's
I
been
know
doing
she does.
Pilates.
Yes, yes, she's
It's
been telling me.
This is a new thing in her life. My whole life, my mom just like loves to sleep in. It was like growing up with a teenager, but it was my mom. And we would I would that's why I learned my favorite meal is breakfast, and that's why I learned how to cook breakfast so well. I'm still like the
Okay,
resident breakfast cooker because my mom would just be sleeping. I'm like, all right, I'm making
I'm
pancakes and
making
eggs.
breakfast.
Yeah. But no, my mom's got this new routine. She goes to Pilates in the morning. I love it
Yeah,
for her.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
Veronica 2.0.
There we go. There we go. We all grow up at some point, right?
Some point. I'm still waiting to do that, but enjoying the
Take your
process.
time. Take your time. And yes.
What a trap, right? They all told us that we have to grow up and be adults, and I'm like, this is rough.
It's kind of like when you have a baby. You want the baby to talk and walk. And then when they talk and walk, you're like, sit down and stop talking, right? And then
Yeah.
when you become older and you're a teenager, you just cannot wait to get out of the house. You can't wait to leave. You can't wait to be on your own. And then you get out on your own and you're like, where's my mom?
Yeah. I call
I
her
need to talk
every
to my
day.
mom.
So, yep. Yeah. And you're close with your children. So I know that you know how that feels too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I'm
exactly.
always calling my mom, especially because we're in the same industry. So sometimes I'm asking her things. Did you hear this? Is that new? How do I not know about this?
That's right.
So it's fun to have that camaraderie. Well, thank you for doing this, Pam.
Oh, you're
I will
welcome.
say you should start a podcast if you don't have one already, because you have such a great voice. You have so much knowledge. I think people would just love it.
Well, sometimes I I don't I really don't think I know that much until I start talking with others. And then it's like, well, doesn't everybody know that? Doesn't everybody do it this way? And it's
Yeah.
just it has been that gained knowledge over the years where I just, especially now we'll talk specifically surging, just experimenting and playing and trying different things. And if it doesn't work, well, how come it doesn't work? And I somewhat have an engineering mind also, so it's more of a, let's think through the process. And I push the machine to the point where maybe I shouldn't, but then I also know the limits of what it can do. And it really then opens another path and another door for people to experiment with machines off the edge.
Absolutely. Well, I think that you, like I said, are by far the expert in this. I think it's hilarious that you doubt yourself at all, because I know that I've seen the stuff that you create. It's beautiful. You're very kind. You're very fun to be around. I'm very excited to get you to the store eventually again. It's been a while. I think that was during COVID. So, oh my gosh, that doesn't even
Yes,
count.
yeah, that doesn't count. I was there twice, and it was both really during COVID times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Doesn't count. We need to have you back in a big full capacity. So, my new DM, Heather, or whatever
Yep,
her
Heather.
title is,
Hmm.
Heather is she is phenomenal. I love her.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
loved Holly so
Yeah.
much, and I miss Holly, but Heather has really stepped in a great way as our new DM, and so she's been very helpful, and I love her so much. So,
Great.
um, the
Fantastic.
always everyone at Bernina is awesome. So it's
Yeah.
been great to work with
Yeah.
everybody.
When I first started then with Bernina, being outside of Bernina, you have kind of that, you hear about, oh, Bernina,
Yes.
it's all this. And I get in there and they are the kindest, most
Yep.
genuine, caring uh, group of people that I would ever want to be with, having gone through so much in the last year and struggling, you as well. They are
Yep.
there to support you and to lift you up and to bring you through because they know once you get through that, they're going to work you to death. No, I'm kidding. but
No,
but it
you're gonna
uh,
sell.
it is it really is. I mean, it really is a fantastic group of people with fantastic products that help and support the consumer in every step of the way and the dealers as well, so that with the dealers and the consumers, we can all succeed and we can develop and continue to develop new products and new new ways of doing things in the sewing industry for years to come.
Absolutely. I say that all the time, Pam. There's not a brand, and I sell many brands that has supported me the way Bernina has, and I appreciate that about them. But there's also not a brand that I can say has, like I said, the people behind it working, like you and Heather and all of the creative team. It's a
Right.
phenomenal brand. The blog posts that you guys, the We All Sew blog is
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's a great resource for people. You guys are always bringing in cool new people like Terrence and
Right,
all
right.
these
I'm
different.
doing I'm doing a Instagram, whatever they call that, an Instagram
Uh,
live with Jedi Manda, and we're going to talk about surging Halloween costumes and all the funky fabrics that cosplayers work with. And that's on October the 9th, I think it is.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
so fun. I mean, how much? I mean, you got to be having fun too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It is. And just to throw this out there for everyone that's watching or listening or viewing, it Bernina is the only company that designs, develops, and manufactures all of their own machines in every segment of quilting, embroidery, and serging. It's the only company
Wow.
that does that.
I guess I never thought of that. And it's so that's why it's such a solid product because it's the
Yeah.
same eyes on it all the way through. The
Right.
same Overwatch all the
And the platform, uh, the GUI platform as they call it, the built-in computer systems are consistent throughout the products. So when you have and understand the one product, you're going to understand all of them across the board. Not
That's what I
learning
love about the
different,
Burnett series.
yeah,
Yes, you've got
mm-hmm,
that same screen on Burnett's and it transfers over to learning when you get
Bernina's.
to Bernina. Yeah, it's
Yep.
amazing. Ah,
Mm-hmm.
well, this has been awesome, Pam. I will make sure that this gets distributed to the entire sewing industry.
Okay,
Def-
great.
No, I'm just kidding. It'll go live on YouTube and you know what? I think that it's got a lot of great information for people looking for a first time machine or maybe a first time overlocker or serger, cover
Yeah.
stitch. And I will fight for you to come to my store very soon.
Sounds fantastic. Well, we'll have to look at the calendar pretty soon. So
We
you and I
will.
can get together and do that. And then also I will send you some pictures of what I
Send me some
have,
pictures.
and then you can post those around, and we'll give you a smattering of different kinds of techniques as well.
Fun, very fun. I'll send you I'm so glad I have your cell phone number. I can send you a text
Yes, for sure.
if I need
Absolutely.
anything, Pam. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you.